Attention Big Blue Nation. Welcome to Kentucky Basketball Then and Now, a unique exploration of America's paramount collegiate hardwood program, featuring anecdotes and memories from the 1950s forward to the very latest on everything UK hoops. Kentucky Basketball Then and Now seats Wildcat fans front court and center. Here's Lexington native and SEC standout Gary Waddell and Owensboro native and Rupp Front senior student manager Mike Harreld.
Hello and welcome again to Kentucky Basketball Then and Now. I'm Gary Waddell, and Mike Harreld and Tom Gray are on the phone with me. Mike, I'm not sure where you are. I know Tom is up in northern Kentucky, but we're happy to have everybody join us. Don't forget, the way to communicate with us is chatwildcats, plural, at gmail.com. The big news, of course, in Kentucky yesterday was Denny Crum's passing. We knew that was happening as they called in the hospice 3 weeks or so ago.
Yeah.
And certainly that was coming. I think and hope Kentucky fans eased up on him a little bit as he became a very good friend of Joe Hall and also became a good friend of a guy that I love very much, which is Jock Sutherland. So, but anyway, that was a tough one. He was kind of, to Kentucky, what Lute Olson and Billy Donovan was. He turned down UCLA 3 times. And I'm sure there was when you do it the third time, you probably expect to get a raise from UCLA, and he probably did, from Louisville, and he probably did. But he did a great deal. His career, though, traced Cal's quite a bit. He was there 30 years. In his first 10, he went to a number of Final Fours and won 2 national championships. After that, he didn't make another Final Four.
That's correct.
Does that sound familiar?
It does. It sounds all too familiar.
Yes, it does. But anyway, he's 86 and a nice guy. I met him one time at the Final Four in Denver when he was on that Sunday between the games where he was checking out, and I was right behind him. He was as gracious as he could be to me at the airport there. And I think that's how most people remember him. He was a very nice person.
I have a recruiting story for you, Gary, on Denny Crum. Okay. He was on John Wooden's staff in the late 1960s.
Right.
He scouted on the road. He looked for recruits on the road. And he came back to the office one day and he says, Coach Wooden, I just saw the best center prospect I've ever seen in my life. And Coach Wooden said, well, we have Lou Alcindor on our team. How can you say that? He said, I'll repeat it. I just saw the best center prospect I've ever seen. Coach Wooden said, come in my office and close the door. And, of course, he was talking about Bill Walton. He had scouted and ultimately helped sign it at UCLA. So be hard-pressed to name 2 players of that high level of ability virtually back-to-back. I guess we'd had those things with guys like Bill Spivey and Alex Groza and Ralph Beard back in the 40s and 50s, but that's a pretty amazing story.
Well, it is. It is. I think at that time, Walton was kind of an unknown, though, his senior year.
He was, because Tom McMillan had all the national publicity.
Yeah.
As the best big man in the nation.
Yeah.
We almost did get him.
Yeah.
Kentucky, I mean.
Yeah. He was from Helix High School in San Diego.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
That Helix always, for some reason, has stuck in my mind about 60 years now. But he was, when he's healthy, I think the best big man that there ever was.
It's interesting that you point out the parallel between Crump and Coach Cal. I think there's something about coaching that you need to move on after a while. I think you get stuck in your roots or something, or just something doesn't quite jihad. I mean, I think Coach Rupp was the best coach ever, but I think he saw a little bit of that too. Yeah. It's just hard to stay up at that top level. The one that was closest to it was Pitino, but he kept changing jobs. Yeah. If he'd have stayed at Kentucky, I think he may have put together the best run that we've ever seen. But if is a small word with a very big meaning.
Mike, I generally agree with you that Pitino was magic in the 1990s, but even he started to slip in the mid 1990s. We were the number one program by far in 95, 96, 97.
Yeah.
And yet Pitino went 2 straight years without signing McDonald's All-American. He had 2 straight recruiting classes that weren't ranked in the top 20. And those are the classes that were left to lead the team when he went on to the Celtics. So something happened even to Pitino.
Yeah.
And it's just hard to do that.
I think it's human nature when you're putting in during season. I don't know whether they put in 50 hours a week, 60. You've been successful. And through that success, you've made all the money you ever need and much, much more in today's coaching and salaries. And you have a tendency to get a little lazy. Who wants like in Cal's, who wants to fly out to L.A. and visit this recruit this weekend from San Diego who's put his name in the portal when you could be out playing golf or do something else? And certainly Cal, as we well know, has made a lot of money and a lot to be made in the future, next, 6 years. But I think that's human nature, that you don't work as hard getting to on the top of the mountain as you did getting there. And I think that's a part of it. I've seen here in Atlanta, I followed Bobby Crimmins closely. Bobby did the same thing. When he was recruiting, on 2 occasions, he hitchhiked down in Miami area to get the recruits home. And then his last 3 or 4 years, they politely asked him to leave at Georgia Tech. He had built it up, and again, very politely, they think the world of him down there, but his last 3 or 4 years at Tech was miserable. And Bobby probably was the hardest working recruiter there was back in his era. So
it's hard for coaches to adjust to the different generations as they come up. Coach Rupp was one who I thought who did it pretty well, very well, as a matter of fact. Coach Wooden did it. Dean Smith did it. And I guess you could say Coach K did it.
I'd say
but when
so.
you coach 2 or 3 different generations of kids, and let's face it, although the kids nowadays do dumb things like we all did, they're different than we were. We had short hair and yes, sir, and no, sir, and yes, ma'am, and no, ma'am. And we were different from a different generation. Things were different for us. And it's really, really hard for coaches, I think, to adjust to that.
Yeah. I would say Coach K kept it. I don't think there was any year that ended in his last 30, 35 years, he coached 40 at Duke, that they were out of the top 10. I mean, it was just a fixture. Duke was somewhere in that top 10, except for the year he had back surgery in mid-year. Every other year, I kept thinking, well, they're going to be down this year. Well, they weren't down. They were in the top 10. Of course, they knew they had about 15 wins in the bag playing at that, what did Adolph call those little gyms? Barns or something like that. He said, one match and a good piece of wood will burn it down. Talking about Auburn and some of those ones in the Southeastern Conference. But he was, of course, he came from a military background, so he wasn't used to not being disciplined and so forth. But I don't miss him. That being Coach K, even though they had a really good year this year. Don't miss him at all.
I think UK is about the only school that has successfully replaced a legendary coach. I don't think Joe Hall or Rick Pitino or John Calipari or any of them are as good as Coach Rupp was, but they've more or less kept the program at or near that level.
Yeah.
And other schools have not been able to do that after a coaching legend leaves.
Yeah.
Like Dean Smith, like Jim Boeheim at Syracuse, any number of others. Even Coach Wooden at UCLA.
Yep.
They're good, but they're not anywhere near as good as they were under Coach Wooden. And Kentucky has been able to do that.
Well, actually, Joe Hall made them better. Adolph went to, 0 Final Fours since 57.
Yeah.
Or 58 when they won the championship. So Adolph didn't end very well either. And Joe came in there and within 2 or 3 years, had him way up there. Went to the championship game in 75. Had that great game that I think most Kentuckians will remember to the day they die, and that's that, the Indiana game in Dayton in 75, the semifinal game where, that was just a well-played, beautiful game. They won by 2 points up in the 90s, I think it was. And
92-90.
Yeah, that was one of the happier nights of my life. when they beat Bobby Knight. That was after what had happened early in the year when he hit Coach Hall in the back of the neck and so forth. But that was a heck of a game. And of course, Indiana didn't have their best player. It would have been different for us. Scott May was hurt with a broken wrist. He tried to play a little bit, but he couldn't do anything.
But that was a great win for Kentucky, no question about it.
Yes, it was. All the overpasses, the fans populated those and waved every time they came under the bridge, and then they had almost a full house at Moore Coliseum to greet them. The airport was packed. They couldn't get another person in the airport. They came out to greet him from Dayton, and but anyway, that was a exciting time, very exciting time.
Yeah, let's get those back if we can. I think we've kind of lost that magic.
Well, and I think in general, I'm not sure the young kids follow it, where those students were out there today, they'd be on their electronic devices and so forth, texting and playing games. It's a different society, and I think football and basketball are not the same. And you look at, even football's got some openings in their student section at most schools. It's just not totally full. Tom, you may want to start us here. We had talked about players who were at UK for 4 years, which now, if you're good, doesn't happen. But back then, you had to stay. Back then, meaning 60s, 70s, you had to stay 4 years, and you came up with a darn good list of some of the guys that stayed at UK for 4 years, and you and I were particularly talking about guys that improved a great deal from 1 year to another. I think I brought that up in the conversation, that I hope Oscar improved a great deal, his shooting and some of the others. But what was that list that you had? Why don't you name the names?
Okay. Well, the first one goes way back to Roger Newman. Roger Newman was a high school All-American, such as it was, back in 1956. But he never played for UK until 1961. I suppose there were some academics and eligibility or something. He played on the Kittens in 57, but then he never played varsity until 1961. And he was pretty darn good. He got drafted twice by the NBA. So he might have been successful those other years if he were eligible. Reggie Warford is the one that comes first to mind. His first 3 years, he probably didn't play 50 minutes total in 3 years. Then he went on to be the starting point guard on the NIT champion team in 1976. And that wasn't a great team, but it was great compared to what they might otherwise have been. They accomplished a pretty good deal for having lost every senior from the year before and having lost Rick Roby to a broken leg.
Yeah.
Gary, one you brought up was Roy Roberts in the early 60s. I remembered the name, but I didn't remember as much about him as you do. What about him?
Well, I was just old enough to know what basketball was then. I was 9, 10 years old, and I remember some fans, I don't know if it was at a game behind me or something, but they were saying how he had improved because he played very little like Reggie his first 3 years. From Atlanta, went up there as redshirt, and of course freshmen weren't eligible then. And then his senior year was a darn good player. He could shoot that corner shot. I remember when UK particularly played West Virginia in the UKIT, he had some big corner shots to win that game for UK. I guess that's 1960, maybe 61. And also a good guy. I knew him from here in Atlanta. His family he actually went to Northside Hospital, but his family had a farm and was well-liked. Died in the last couple of years, but had endurance like crazy. He could run. Mike, you were probably too young to catch him. Were you all there at the actual same time?
Roy was a junior my first year, I think. He was definitely there as a senior, and he was a premier defensive player.
Yeah.
He guarded whoever the star was on the other team and usually gave them fits. There was a guy named Ron Whitby at Tennessee that was a really good shooter, and you had Whitby couldn't drive very well, but if you gave him a half a foot with the ball, he would score. And so Roberts had to sit on his head. But Roy was a real hustler and
yes, endurance was great.
Yes, and a fine person.
Yeah.
He was from Georgia, and he went back to Georgia after being at UK, and was a leading citizen and part of the state legislature for a long time. He was just a real good person.
Yeah. He used to have a big, he's Republican, and every election year, I guess it would be, he had a big hoedown at his farm. And for Republicans, as you would imagine, being a Republican. And I knew his son a little bit here, the whole family, I think, was great. I bet Roy didn't weigh 180 pounds. He was all skin and bones, and that's one of the reasons he could run so much, I guess. But he really improved his fourth year. And the only other person that comes to mind for me in all of basketball that improved the 180 between freshman and sophomore year was Joakim Noah down in Florida. His freshman year, he hardly played. And then his senior year, they won the championship, and he was a third draft pick. They elected to come back, obviously, but he improved. He went up to New York that summer, played at Rucker Park, and knew his way around. And, of course, his dad was well-known and respected up there. And he improved dramatically that one summer between his freshman and sophomore year.
Mike, two others you'll probably remember from your era are John Adams and Steve Clevenger.
Yes. Yeah. John was certainly one of the hardest working people. He got everything out of himself that he had. He wasn't particularly gifted, but he worked really, really hard. So this senior year was the year I think we went 13 and 13, but John just really carried the team a lot of times. I always thought he was an excellent person and a good ball player. Just didn't quite have the natural talent that a lot of people that are at that level do. And then who was the other one?
Steve Clevenger hardly played for the Runts, but he really didn't play until Argento got hurt in 1968, and he started the rest of the year. But he was a very highly regarded recruit in 1964 when they signed him.
Yes, and he was the one that I think I told this story on one of the podcasts where we were at Vanderbilt. We had beaten them in Lexington by just a few points, and of course, you had to win the conference to go to the tournament back in those days, and so this was a really crucial game in Nashville. And so we were having our pregame meal, and so we're sitting in the dining room there at the hotel, and it's supposed to be private, but all of a sudden, somehow, 4 fans who were a bit boisterous got in the room and started going around speaking to everybody, and we were just about finished. I was trying to get them out, but it was hard to do. And all of a sudden, Coach Rupp passed by me and said, "Come up to the room, Slim." And so, it took me 3 or 4 minutes to get things together to get up to his room. And when I got there, he was stepping out of the shower and drying himself off with a big old towel. And he said, "Slim, I just got so nervous down there with all those people. I had to come up here and I broke out in sweat. So I had to take a shower. So I was ready for the game." And so we sat there then for, maybe 10 minutes before it was time to go to the game. And he just talked and talked and talked. And one of the things was that he said 2 or 3 times was he had made a mistake by not redshirting Steve Clevenger, because obviously in practice you could tell that Steve was a really good player, but he just wasn't quite good enough to break into that. The Runts were quite a group, and they weren't trying to keep him out. He just didn't quite fit as well as some of the others. But you're right. Then later, when Argento got hurt, then Steve showed his true gifts and potential.
I remember that I was in the middle of being recruited pretty hard by Ray Mears. I remember he said that was really Argento getting hurt was a break for Kentucky, because Clevenger really kept him calm. He was a playmaker. He slowed it down, where Argento, excellent scorer, but he wasn't a playmaker. I think his peripheral vision was about 8 inches, about the width of the rim. And,
Yes.
and Mears thought that was a good break for UK because they played better with him.
Phil never had a shot that he didn't like.
Yeah, you're exactly. He was a good offensive player, no question,
Yeah.
and a pretty good guy for a high guy way up there. I shouldn't say that. Next to Cleveland up there.
Yeah.
So 3 others come to mind, Gary, that Brett Barup is one, and Brett signed with UK, very highly touted high school All-American, top 5, 10 in the country, all that stuff. But he came to UK at a time when we were just stacked with players. We had Sam Bowie, we had Melvin Turpin, we had Kenny Walker, we had so-and-so and so-and-so. And Barup virtually sat the bench for 3 years, redshirted 1 year, until his senior year. We had no center, so he was a forward, but Coach Hall put him at center, and he did quite well and led that team to the Sweet 16, even though we didn't have much of a record. Barup was a key in some NCAA success that year. So he's one that comes to mind that didn't do much until his last year. And then 2 more are Stan Key. Anybody who's a UK alumnus, I'm not, but if you are, you know Stan Key more as the director of an alumni association than you do as a basketball player. Again, didn't play much as a sophomore or junior, but started as a senior and was quite good on Rupp's last team in 1972. And then my favorite, because he's local, is Troy McKinley, who was a hot shot at Simon Kenton High School here in Northern Kentucky, 1981, led his team to the championship. I think until Cub Cath won a few years ago, the only Northern Kentucky team to ever win the Kentucky championship. He hardly played at all first 3 years. And then he played a bigger role on that same team that I talked about with Barup, the 1985 team. He was off the bench, but he was a 56% field goal shooter, and he didn't shoot layups or inside shots. He shot from 25 feet and out, and he shot 56%, 90% on his free throws. Very, very good senior year for Troy. And probably, I think, if Coach Hall had maybe thought twice about it, would have been better to give Troy some more playing time in his first few years at UK, because he was a very good player.
Tom, I was about to correct you because I was thinking Cub Cath won the championship Randy Knowles' senior year, but that was Glasgow. They didn't win it his senior year. They were runner-up his junior year, and that's where Randy made his name, and he was, the top 2 or 3 rated in the fall, where that's where a lot of guys like Butch Beard made their reputation in the state tournament.
Yeah. That's still a point of controversy. Some of my grade school buddies were on that team, and it's still a point of controversy with them. They thought Earlington got a bit of a break on, referee's call or the time clock or something. They felt like they should have beat Earlington in 1967.
Mm-hmm.
Earlington won on a last-second shot, not unlike the Soviets beating the USA in 1972 Olympics. Not unlike that at all, in terms of last-second shot to win the game.
Earlington had a good player who went to Georgia, and I'm struggling to remember his name. He was, just an average player in college, but went to Georgia. So.
One other story about Phil Argento you might find interesting. It was he came to UK, as I recall, the year before Coach Hall really got the recruiting program going, and we didn't have a great recruiting class that year. But I get a call from Coach Lancaster, asked to come in the office, and I came in and he said, "We got this basketball player coming to town this weekend," and he had a friend. I can't remember his name, but he was one of his buddies. I think he stayed with him the whole time he was at UK. So they had me showing him around Lexington and the campus. And that was the recruiting trip, which, I did the best I could, but I don't think I was probably the best foot forward we could have shown, but I just showed how our recruiting had really kind of leveled off and wasn't doing a lot. And then Coach Hall, to his credit, came in the next year and really put a lot more energy into it and started creating some good recruiting classes.
Mike, I think you're probably downing yourself a little bit. I'm sure he enjoyed seeing the accounting building.
Yeah. I showed him all over campus and all over town. I did the best I could, but it just was. It just seemed a little strange to me that didn't have some of the players and other stuff. But it was kind of a last minute thing. I don't know. Maybe everybody else canceled out, but I got called in anyway. I did it, or he was coming anyway. But I got him to sign at UK.
Yeah.
And of course, back then, in terms of places to have fun and go to eat, all you had to do was say, "There's the Columbia Steakhouse, and there's the Tally Ho."
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Jerry's Drive-In. So he came in, I think, as one of 3 scholarship guys, as I recall, and he's the only one that lasted. I don't know if the other 2 flunked out, or I don't remember who they were, but it was
Alvin Ratliff. Alvin Ratliff
he went back home to the mountains.
Yeah, he actually went to Vietnam.
Oh, is that right? Yeah, he didn't last 2 years.
He flunked out and got drafted, went to Vietnam for 2 years, and then he played at some small school and actually got drafted by the NBA out of that small school, Delta State, I think. And then Jerry Gooder from upstate New York, who was much better than high school than he ever was after that.
He was from Schenectady, where Pat Riley's from, and I remember when they signed him, Pat said he'll never play at Kentucky. I guess he'd play pickup ball in Schenectady with him, and Pat said that's a wasted scholarship. And he was right.
He sort of rode the coattails. That team, Troy, New York, was really good. Undefeated. I think they beat Lou Alcindor maybe once. Considered one of the best high school teams ever. But Gooder rode the coattails. They had Luther Rackley and Roosevelt Phillips and some other guys who were high caliber talent. So
was he I think my senior year, there was a freshman player from New York.
That would have been him.
That would have been him, probably, yep.
And he wasn't doing very well in practice, but he was doing sort of okay. But he was doing very poorly in accounting. I can't swear that was the name, but I think it was. And so he had made something like a 39 on the first exam. And I was part of the tutoring group. Back then you could get paid $5 an hour for tutoring people, and that was big money. And so they asked me to tutor him. And so I really, poured it on him and did everything I could to get him going, because we wanted him to be eligible. And the second test, I think he went from 39 to something like 58. And so I went and told Coach, I think this young man's going to make it, because we poured accounting in his ear and it just didn't stick. And it wasn't long after that he left. I don't know if Coach Lancaster sent him on his way or if he just decided to leave by himself.
I don't remember where he went to. I didn't particularly pay attention because I knew he wasn't probably going to play there to begin with. And
he went to a small school in upstate New York. He's actually he played on the senior pro golf tour. Believe it or not, he's a golf pro in Virginia or North Carolina or somewhere like that.
Oh, interesting.
I liked him. He was a good person, but he just didn't quite have it for what was needed there.
He didn't. He had the reputation. He did. Coach Hall was pretty tough in terms of conditioning and running and that kind of stuff. And Gooder had the reputation of not being fully bought into that. He didn't want to do all the effort that was necessary. Is what I heard that from one of his teammates on the Kittens, who's a friend through online stuff, Bill Rutledge.
Oh, yeah.
He was a walk-on.
There are, I think, ways, you had to go up and down Takes Creek Road, and I think there are ways, if a guy really wanted to, he could cheat a little bit on the running and just hope a teammate didn't turn him in. I don't know if that was the case with him or not, but that's funny. Jumping around the conversation here, I was going to say something about Huggy Bear, but 2 hours ago, West Virginia announced he'll keep his job, but lose $1 million of salary and have to do some community work and take some classes, tolerance classes. But you imagine getting diarrhea of the mouth one afternoon that cost you $1 million times his how many years?
Who was this?
Huggy Bear up in West Virginia.
Bob Huggins.
Oh, yeah.
And so anyway, he's got a lot of money, but that's that.
What did he do? What did he say or cause all that problem?
He used a word that should never be used publicly or even thought about privately.
Okay.
To refer to some folks who are in our society. I'll just give you a clue and say that it's used in England as a nickname for cigarettes. That's all I'll say.
Okay.
But further to that, Gary, he had said something similar at a private luncheon meeting that same day. Not exactly the same, but he was critical of Catholics and making fun of nuns and so forth.
Yeah.
When you're a public person, you just can't say that kind of stuff.
He also used the F word a number of times, I understand, in that conversation too. So he was hitting everything. Maybe he had a little too much to drink. Everybody knows he used to be a pretty good drinker in his day. But yeah, that was a shame. I mean, I've never liked his personality, but gosh, he's lucky to have his job. I thought to myself early in the week, supposedly he was on hot water at West Virginia, but he had a pretty good year this year, went to the tournament. But I think if they ever wanted a reason to show cause and get him out of there and not have to pay him anything of his contract, they had it right there. And so evidently they want him to return. Understand he's extremely popular in Morgantown. He grew up in Morgantown, and the fans love him for some reason.
Well, he's been a good coach.
Yeah.
Did you know that he graduated high school in 1972. He still ranks in the top 10 of most career points ever scored by an Ohio high school player.
Talking about
His
Huggy
dad
Bear?
was a longtime coach.
Who are you talking about now?
Hugs.
Okay, well, he grew up in Charleston, not Huntington, but where the campus is.
The name of the town is Gannatahood. I don't know. It's up in Northeast Ohio. He lived in West Virginia as a younger player, but he actually graduated high school from a school, Gannatahood Valley, in Northeast Ohio. He had 3 brothers that were all good players. He went to Ohio U first, didn't like it, transferred to West Virginia, and graduated West Virginia.
Yeah, believe it or not, he's got a law degree.
Huggins does. Wow.
Yes. Yeah.
He did a great job upsetting Kentucky in the NCAA.
Yes.
When Coach Cal hadn't been around, but maybe two or 3 years.
It was his first year with Wall and all those guys.
Yeah, and it was he was playing a matchup zone, and Kentucky never figured it out the whole game.
Mm-hmm.
I saw it the first half, and I said, well, obviously they'll figure out a way to change this thing because you got to create a lot more movement and move the ball. And
yeah, we had some great players, but we didn't have outside shooting that year, which is true of a lot of our years with Cal. But we had some great athletes.
Yeah, but it just didn't know how he's just not a good X and O coach. He obviously a great recruiter, but not very good at the theoretical aspects of the game.
So tomorrow he's got the starting forward for San Diego, who of course were they runner up? They made a Final Four. I can't remember.
They were runner up.
Yeah. So guy averaged 8 points and 6 rebounds. Doesn't sound very good, but when you're on the second best team in the country, that may not be too bad. But he's coming in to Lexington tomorrow for a visit.
Yeah, it was a story in the paper about that today.
Oh, is that right? Uh-huh.
Yeah, and supposedly they think he's going to take the place of somebody that just Livingston.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I don't know. I'm not very optimistic about next year at this point, but I'd like to be proven wrong.
I'm not optimistic they'll have 10 players to scrimmage.
Yeah.
Right now we have 7.
Yeah, we've got some scholars. Well, let's hope Oscar comes back to make 8.
Yeah, that would help.
That's not a given, but I think things are maybe moving in that direction. That's funny. Yeah, we got to have some good bench play, which we haven't had. Yeah, I mean, who wants to go there and sit on a bench where you're waiting for these 5-stars to finish their first year? It's just, you're not. Some schools seem to do it, though. They seem to recruit great players on top of great players. But Cal hasn't wanted to try that or been successful, whatever, on that.
Joe Hall did that, Gary, if you remember back in the late
he was
early
stacked.
80s.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had early 80s, we had 3 point guards who were high school All-Americans in different classes, and they all stayed the whole time.
Yep.
Nobody transferred.
Yep. Takes a special salesman coach, I think, to keep them happy.
Yeah.
Like that. Tom, why don't you mention to the audience what you heard Dickinson's getting paid at Kansas?
Yeah, obviously I didn't see the piece of paper that said this, but I read online somewhere that Dickinson got a $4 million 2-year NIL deal to sign with Kansas. It's not a quid pro quo, but his NIL at Kansas is $4 million for 2 years.
So it's $8 million or 4 divided?
No, it's $4 million total, so
okay.
$2 million a year.
I got you.
That's. I don't think UK has that money available. Really, I don't know, but doesn't seem like it. All the estimates I see on all these guys we signed, 500, 600, 700,000 is the highest for guys like Bradshaw and Wagner and all those. And honestly, I don't think Dickinson's in their class in terms of talent, but in terms of available transfers from the portal, he was probably the best. So
and
that's a lot of money to pay.
Yeah, UK doesn't seem to really be promoting the NIL like I believe they could, just because of their fan base being so devoted.
That's Mitch Barnhart on that.
Yeah, Kentucky in my day was the money was in coal, the money was in tobacco, and the money was in horses. And I don't know,
all gone.
All that's gone.
Yeah. We certainly know coal is gone, even though the richest guy in the state is chairman of a coal company out of Tulsa, but it's not what it once was. I don't think horse racing is what it once was.
No.
Horse racing is a tough racket because you got to put so much money into those horses every day. It's tough. Well, I think that's about all. Any other comments, guys?
Well, I guess I read again today that Wall Street Journal article recently from April 24th about, we're doing a great job getting kids and making them ready to go to the NBA, but we're not doing anything for the university. The article also points out that we've won 1 NCAA game in the last three years.
Yeah.
And it's just not a good case. I think the fan base needs to really start revolting and make something happen, because I think you're seeing the results of a guaranteed contract and a methodology that obviously works to develop the players, but doesn't do any very good for the university. And maybe I'm wrong, but I thought the program was all about trying to make the university win championships, go to the Final Four, et cetera, et cetera. It's just not happening. And so the fan base has got to start raising heck with the legislature, I think, to make something happen, because it's kind of locked in up there at the top.
I don't see the taxpayers putting in $50-some million to going to be their money if it comes from the state of Kentucky to pay Calipari's to keep his cancellation or what's left of his contract, and then turn around and spend another $7-8 million on a new coach for 5 years per year. I may be wrong, Mike. That would be a good thing for you to put on your agenda. Coming up with, and it may be in a collective. I don't know how many people have that 2 or 4 or 5 people do, but if everybody chips in about $200, maybe they can raise that amount of money. Are you up for that, Mike?
Yeah.
I'll
Yeah.
give 200. Sure.
Yeah, I will too.
I think somebody needs to get it started. I mean, we've done some pretty big buyouts and stuff, but not anything obviously that big. But
From what I understand, the most of that big salary that Calipari and all the other coaches of his stature get is not a salary from the university.
Yeah,
It's a
media,
the boosters or the athletic club or something like that. And the state, the salary as a UK employee, I think, is under $1 million for Calipari, and the rest of it comes from booster funds or something like that.
But that's guaranteed.
Buyouts would come from them too.
All that money outside of UK though is guaranteed. Or
Yeah.
if it was only $1 million, he would have been out of there 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Say the least.
Yeah, and I don't know anything about the enforceability of that. I guess it all is legal and works, but the results is pretty dismal, and it's certainly at this point I'd love to be proven wrong, but the results next year isn't going to be maybe even as good. So it's I just wonder if the UK fan base is just kind of giving up and.
Well, I think they're very excited
things.
because of this recruiting class. If we hadn't gotten this recruiting class, it would have been like last summer, pretty dismal. But, when you got, 4 out of the top 6 players in the high school coming in, you better win, but that gives you something to look forward to. Got Gonzaga coming in and a really good schedule next year, which tougher than they usually have. And but you're right, next year, I say next year's a big one for Cal, but what are they going to do, fire him next year? And they can't do it now. That doesn't make sense either. So Mitch Barnhart got a little carried away with that lifetime or 10-year contract. And he's the one that should be catching it, but I don't hear anybody criticizing him. I don't think the president made that up. I think it was Mitch Barnhart. And that was
I think what happened is Todd was a big booster of Barnhart, and so he gave him this long-term contract, and the new president can't really do a whole lot about it. Is what my understanding is.
Yeah.
And I think he's more interested in other issues, is the impression I have. I haven't talked to him personally, but I don't know. It's just going to be interesting to me to see how long Kentucky fans put up with it.
Well, when you say put up, they have no option to put it. How they can not put up with it is not buy tickets and not spend money at UK, but
and go to the legislature. In the past, when they weren't doing so well, it showed up in the support they got from the legislature.
Oh, didn't know that.
And I think it's going to happen again. Unless the state has changed, I don't spend much time there anymore. But it was kind of God, family, and UK basketball were the priorities, and UK basketball is really, it's kind of average minus right now.
If you travel anywhere in the world and say the word Kentucky, people will think of Kentucky Fried Chicken, Kentucky Derby, and Kentucky basketball. Those are the 3 things associated with the word Kentucky.
Oh, that's our reputation. No question about that. The next coach is going to be very, very important, though, because I got a feeling the program may be down when Cal eventually leaves. And just like Pitino gave the fans hope, and he had the fans wrapped around his little finger in about 3 weeks, I think.
Yeah.
Just his force of personality. And the next coach needs to be something like that. If he's a dull guy like Eddie Sutton and some of those, we could be down for quite some time. Maybe look at Louisville and look at Indiana. They've been down for 20 years?
Every bit of it, yeah.
So, and that's in the middle of the best basketball state in the country.
Yeah. Think of it this way. Coach Rupp was Hall of Famer. Joe Hall is borderline, but certainly in the category of Hall of Famer one way or another. Eddie Sutton was Hall of Famer, although not at UK. Pitino's a Hall of Famer. Calipari's a Hall of Famer. I don't think Tubby's quite there. And, of course, Gillespie doesn't even deserve mention. That was just a hiccup. so we've had 4 Hall of Fame coaches in more or less in consecutive years, not exactly, but more or less. So we've been pretty lucky, and I think we'd have to be real lucky to find another one.
Yeah, there's only so, but they got new coaches every year. There's a new coach that looks to be the hottest thing on the block, and some of them fade out after a couple of years, and some of them continue. And I remember, because I worked with a guy that was a Duke grad, when they hired Coach Krzyzewski, this guy was as mad as he could be. He never even heard of you like everybody else. And he said, why in the hell did they pick this guy? Never heard of him, no track record. And that turned out to be a pretty good hire. If you're a great AD, you could pick out qualities in people that the others don't see. But well,
Yeah, I hope they're really looking for somebody like that. But my impression, which is not very easy to obtain because I'm so far away, but they're just kind of hoping Calipari manages to pull something out of the hat. And it's not very. I'm very pessimistic. What is it? I've heard this and I can't think of it, but the Kentucky, there's the 3 B's for Kentucky, basketball, bourbon, and there was, when I was up there a few years ago, they were always talking about the 3 B's, and now I can't remember the third one.
Yeah.
But certainly the first 2 are prominent.
Yep. Well, horses, but that doesn't start with the B, I don't think.
No.
I don't know what that would be, but
Yeah. But when you walk into a bar in most places in the world, you see the wines on display, and you walk into one or a restaurant or whatever in Kentucky, you see on display all the various bourbons they're offering.
Yep.
Yeah. Gary, I want to leave you with one thought. I was doing a little research earlier this week, and I looked up, wondered how Coach Rupp had done against Coach Wooden, and Kentucky, how Kentucky had done against Coach Wooden. They'd only played 4 times. Coach Rupp beat him 3 times. A couple of the last 2 were pretty close games, 1 point and 2 point, but UK won the games in the late 50s, early 60s. And then, of course, Coach Wooden's last name, UK lost in the NCAA championship game to him. So they only played 4 times, and Wooden won probably the most important one of them. So,
well, the championship game though was Joe Hall.
Right. That was just how Kentucky had done against Coach Wooden.
Yeah.
Right.
But Coach Rupp, bluegrass. There you go.
The referees were swayed by Wooden's fit. Remember the fit he threw? It was.
UK didn't have a chance once he announced Saturday or Sunday that he's not going to be back. That was all she wrote for UK that game, I think. And,
Mike, the other B is bluegrass, I think.
That's it. You're
basketball,
right.
bourbon, and bluegrass. Thanks to Daniel for that.
Oh.
Yeah, right.
By the way,
yep.
I want to, here at the studio, I want to compliment the owner and head engineer, Daniel Dottridge. He's got a great facility here, clean as a whistle. When we get up, I see him going around the tables and wipe them off like we're in the middle of the pandemic again. But good guy to work with. If you have any needs that would, in Atlanta or Chattanooga, you need a great podcasting area or studio, I think our team would certainly recommend Daniel to you.
Yeah, definitely. He's coined a phrase that I like. He is sound-sational.
Yeah.
I agree.
Well,
he does
the best thing is just easy to get along with. It makes it a pleasure, and he'll even call and remind us of our studio time. And I don't know how many people are going to do that. And so anyway, just a plug in for Daniel, who's treated us very well here the last 3 months or so.
I just wanted to say we've decided for the rest of the summer we're going to do it every other week. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I mentioned this once before, but some people every now and then say, but what was that thing you said a couple months ago that was kind of profound? But I'll do it again. We don't do what we do because the way we feel. we feel the way we feel because of what we do. And I think a lot of people, gosh, me in my life have had that backwards, that I don't feel like doing this, or I feel that, don't feel like up to it. And that shouldn't be the issue. Go ahead and do it, and we'll start to feel like it. So,
yep. That's a good saying to keep in mind.
Yep. That's the last philosophy thing I've got today. First and only. All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining in. We appreciate it. And if we got something wrong, I don't think that will ever happen here, but should we ever get something wrong, email us and we'll correct it if there's a correction to be made. And thanks again.
All right. Thanks all.
Yeah. Thank y'all. Enjoyed it.
Thank you for listening to Kentucky Basketball Then and Now. Mixed by sensational audio expert Daniel Dottridge of Atlanta Podcast Recording, with web hosting by Buzzsprout. On behalf of hosts Gary Waddell and Mike Harreld, go Big Blue.